Hello everyone, welcome to this discussion of SQL Server. In this session, I'm going to talk about the concept of normalization, a very important term, a very important, you can say, feature of SQL Server. Normalization is a process of restructuring the relational database. Now, in this particular session, I'll be specifically be talking about the types of normalization, how we can normalize a table in a step-by-step manner. I'll start the discussion with the definition and then I will discuss the type or the categories of normalization, and then we'll see how we can implement each of the normalization with a hands-on example. So let's see what is normalization. Now, as per the definition of data, normal forms. These normal forms are what? Normal forms are nothing but the rules and regulations. Now, this can be implemented by creating a new database or it can be implemented by improving the existing database. So, normalization rules and regulations by which we improve the or we restructure the database to make the queries more and more flexible. Now, the process of taking database design and applying a set of criteria and rules, what we call is a normal forms. Now, there are various categories of normal form like first normal form, second normal form, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Now, the question is what kind of steps we take through normalization to reduce the data redundancy and increase the data integrity. Now, data redundancy means multiple occurrence of a data in multiple tables in a database. Now, let me give you an example for that. I repeat, data redundancy means multiple occurrence of a data in multiple places in a database. Now, for example, if you have a sales table, the sales table has a customer ID, customer name, customer address, sales. Now, for each customer ID, there can be multiple transaction, right? A customer can buy multiple times in a day for multiple products. Now, for each transaction the customer makes, the address of the customer is recorded in the table. So there is multiple address for the same customer, for the same ID. So this multiple occurrence of the data in a database is what we call data redundancy. And this in terms affect the data integrity, means the data consistency, the data security. It's not a good practice to every time the customer makes a purchase and the address of the customer is getting recorded again and again. This kind of problems is solved through normalization. Now, there are various categories of normalization. Actually, normalization is nothing but the best practices of working with database. There is nothing that you have to learn any other script or any other queries. We will be using the same data query language, data manipulation language, data control language, or data. Normalization is nothing but some of the best practice by which we can make some effective tables. Now, these first, second, third normal forms are nothing but the different categories of normalization by which we can make a table more and more robust and more simplified, reducing the data redundancy. Now, let us first discuss the first normal form. Now, in your screen, so every normal form has a set of rules. Like we have in Constitution, Article 365 has a set of rules, Article 367 has a set of, Article 377 has a set of rules. Similarly, we have set of rules. Now, only when those rules are satisfied, only those rules are fulfilled, then that particular, and only then we can apply the second normal form. For applying the third normal form, the table should be already be in a position where the second normalization or the second normal form is already applied on the table. Now let us understand it through a very simple example. The first normal form, the rules are each cell to be of single value. Entries in a columns are of same type and rows are uniquely identified. Now if you see on the example above, the example above is not fulfilling the first normal form. So what we can see that first, so this is a sales table where we are dealing with a gaming product, where we can see The manufacturer of the product is Microsoft, and the product types are called Xbox and PlayStation, which are purchased by some customers like Alan, Roger, Ivan, and Alan Smith. Now, what happens along with these particular products, there are certain news for each of the products. Now, we can see that some customers have purchased multiple products, like Wilson has purchased Xbox and PlayStation. Now, over here, we can see there is a multiple products which are marked against a customer. Second, we can see that there is a data redundancy in the shipping address, where we can see that 47 Campus Road has occurred twice, once for Roger and the other for Alan. And we can see in the supplier column, against Ivan, the supplier is wholesale and the supplier phone number is a toll-free number. Now, as per the rules of the first normal form, each sale should be have a single value. Now, over here we can see newsletter column. Against Ivan, there are two values. There's not a single value: Xbox news and PlayStation news. So this is not fulfilling the criteria of the first normal form. Second, entries in the same column type. Now, if we apply a first normal form on this particular sales record, the output should look like this. Let me show you the output. You can see each sales to be single valued. So you can see over here for the newsletter, where there were multiple values against Ivan. Now Ivan, we have assigned a customer ID first of all, and each of the sale now has a single value. Instead of wholesale in the supplier column, for Ivan, we have the name of the actual supplier, that is Microsoft and Sony. Instead of having the toll-free number in the supplier phone number, we have actually given the actual toll-free numbers for Microsoft and Sony. So we have normalized this table with the implementation of the first normal form. Second, each entries in the columns are of the same type. Now over here, before normalization, the supplier column, the column type entries were not same type. You can see instead of phone number, it was written toll free. Instead of supply, it was written wholesale. Now you can see all the columns, the values in the columns are of the similar type. Third was rows uniquely identified. So we have to add a unique ID, which we have achieved by adding a customer ID. So we have fulfilled the first criteria of normal form to reduce the data redundancy. Now we can identify each of the customers with the help of a unique ID. Each of the rows can be uniquely identified. Each of the columns are of same type. So this is how we can establish. Now these all things can be easily done with the queries which we have learned. By writing the correct query, by extracting the correct table, you can apply the normalizations over here. Now I will use the second normal form. What is the second normal form? So I have taken the output of the first normal form in the second normal form, and I can further normalize this table. Now what is the second normal form? The table must be already in the first normal form, and all the non-key columns of the table must be dependent on a primary key. Now what is a non-key column? Now for example, if you take the price column over here, there's a price column. Now what the second normalization says, that the non-key columns of the table, now apart from the customer ID, the rest of the section of the table is a non-key columns, should be dependent on the primary key. Now for example, we cannot define the price on the basis of the customer name, right? So second normal form rules states that all the non-key columns of the table must be dependent on the primary key. Now over here we can see the price, if we say, is a non-key column. Now we cannot define a price, we cannot decide the price on the basis of a customer name. We cannot sell a product on the basis of a customer name, right? It's not the right way. You cannot sell a product a different price for Alan, a different price for Roger. You cannot define the price in terms of the customer name. So what we can do, for each of the customers, to maintain a uniform price, we can apply the second normal form, by which we can create a different table where we can create a primary key in terms of the product, and then we can define the price against that product. So there is a separate table which will only hold the price of the product against that particular primary key. So earlier we can see in the right hand side we have created a table with a customer ID. Now what we have done, by applying the second normal form, we have further created a new table which will only hold the price against in a different table where there is a primary key in terms of the product name. So you can see this particular table has been further normalized in terms of a different table which only separately holds the price of the product, and there is no redundancy over here. We can see all the products price are unique in terms of the product name. So the second normalization has been applied. The third normalization is states that you should eliminate the field in a table that do not depend on the key. That is, if you talk about this particular table, the primary key table in the right hand side, the price table, you can see if there is further redundancy of the data in the supplier phone number, where we can see that two phone numbers from the same supplier has been repeated twice. So again, there is a data redundancy over here in terms of the supplier or the product or the price table. So we can apply a third normal form where we need to eliminate the field in a table that do not depend on the key. So what we can do, this particular phone number is not dependent on the item key. We can create another separate table. And what is that separate table? You can see over here another third table created, where I have created a primary key in the names of the supplier, Microsoft and Sony, and we have created one more new table that holds a unique phone number. There is no phone number data redundancy in terms of the supplier phone number. So the third normal form fulfills that you should eliminate the field in a table that do not depend on the key. So these phone numbers are not dependent on this particular product key. Actually, this particular table, the prices are dependent on the primary key. So what we have done to reduce the data redundancy in terms of the supplier phone number, we have created one more table in where we have made the supplier name as a primary key and the phone number as a value of phone number, where only one unique number has been updated against the supplier name. I'm just showing you the practices that we can follow through an example of the first, second, third normal form. So we have also fulfilled the requirement of the third normal form. The next is the fourth normal form, which is no multi-value dependencies. Now what is a multi-value dependency? If you concentrate on the table, customer table, you can see that the address of the customer, that is 47 Campus Road, Boston, and 47 Campus Road, Boston, has been repeated twice over here. So again, there is a data redundancy in terms of the shipping address in the customer table. Now what we can do, by applying the rules of the fourth normal form, which states no multi-value dependencies, we can remove this. We can also control this data redundancy also. How? We have created a different table in terms of the customer, where a single customer name has been updated and all the addresses against that particular customer has been updated against them. So this is a different table for the address of the customer. And now when we apply all the normalized features for starting from first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, fourth normal form, this is the final output, the full normalized table which we started from a single sales table. So we have a customer table where the primary key is customer ID. We have a subscription table which holds all the subscription details against the customer ID. We have a sales invoice table where we have the customer ID and the items. We have an item table and we have a supplier table. And each tables are interrelated with each other with many to one kind of relationship. So we started with a single table, with a sales table, and by applying the different forms of normalization, we have seen that how we have reduced the data redundancy, and we have created certain best design of the database where we can work with single or unique value of data. Now, if there is data redundancy in your table, what happens? The use of update, alter, delete queries increases a lot, which actually increases the amount of queries also for that database or for that table, which is not a good practice in terms of working with SQL. So to reduce those kind of excess querying of your table information, the concept of normalization was introduced while working with SQL. I hope I was able to clear all the concepts of the discussed topic with what I planned for today's agenda in terms of the SQL Server. Now, the best way to learn this topic is to just practice and try to implement these concepts with some useful case studies or useful business scenarios. I hope these topics were quite elaborative, and I tried my best to use some hands-on example to make things more clear for you guys. Thank you for watching this video.